Gamers of Reddit, what are some underrated games do you think more people should play? For me it's got to be an old Xbox game called Metal Arms. It's a bit old now but it's the shit. They were going to do a sequel but the company was bought out or bust or something. Riddick, Escape from Butcher Bay, was expecting the typical steaming turd from a movie-based game. Turned out to be surprisingly really good, 90% on Metacritic. Shelter and Shelter 2, simultaneously the most relaxing and stressful games I've ever played. So gorgeous and the soundtrack is stunning. They're honestly works of art. My Summer Car, it's like a car driving simulator that takes place in 90s Finland. You build your car, in the meanwhile you do dumb shit driving around and interacting with all the drunk men in the map you can get drunk to. Kinda a trashy game but still fun. Gun, it was a 360 launch title. I want it remastered so badly. One of my faves. Champions of Norith on PS2. Been waiting for a remake forever. Loved it more than Baldur's Gate. Deadly Alliance. My wife and I must have played that game and its sequel for 100 hours. The second Viva Pinata game. Screen Cheat. It's a split-screen multiplayer game that you play online. Every character is invisible, and the only way you can kill each other is by looking at each other's perspective. Hence, Screen Cheat. Also some really funny additions into the game, e.g., a mode where every sound is replaced with an Australian going bugger. Cheap and hilarious. Jeanne d'Arc on the PSP was fantastic. I hoped for a sequel or at least another game from the developers. It's honestly the only reason I haven't sold my PSP. The Nonary Games Plus Zero Time Dilemma. Fantastic puzzle, escape room game series. I love the story, though some find it a bit out there. Mercenaries. Playground of Destruction. It was GTA in North Korea. You could hijack anything and destroy any building and call in airstrikes. Truly ahead of its time. Never could beat the final mission, though. Regardless. Amazing. Lord of the Rings. The Third Age. I love JRPGs and this was one of the first from a property I actually recognized and could relate to. The playable characters are original and the story walks hand in hand with the films, bringing in tons of nostalgic fights. I recently did a playthrough of that game on an old PS2. Still holds up. God Hand. I know, the gameplay is a little clunky, but I'll be damned if it isn't funny. Driver, San Francisco. Really cool game with a unique storyline. Sadly, it isn't available by the public anymore. Golden Sun and Golden Sun. The Lost Age. Two of the best RPG games I have ever played and they need to make another one for Switch. Please make it happen, Nintendo. Back in 2003 Bethesda came out with an RPG called Pirates of the Caribbean. The game is not at all connected with the film series, aside from a few names here and there. Basically it was a pretty large world full of islands that you could explore as this guy named Nathaniel Hawke. You could choose what kind of pirate you wanted to be based on your actions. Like you could be a smuggler, a trader, a bloodthirsty swordsman, etc. They gave you skill points as you leveled up to put into things that would help you become the character you wanted to be. You could hire crews for your ships that would also fight at your side as you explored the islands and at sea. On the islands there were dungeons and caverns to explore where you would fight skeletons and get treasures and really great weapons. The ship battles were fun, but they also gave you the option of avoiding them or doing them in a less involved way if that was not your thing. These battles would either be with other pirates or a country that you were not friendly with at the moment. Because diplomacy also played a major role in your character, there were quite a few ships you could choose from too. And if you were a smuggler or trader you would rely on these ships to move cargo from one island to the other. There was a main story of sorts, but it was a pretty open world filled with sidequests that allowed you to do your own thing. My biggest complaint was that the controls were a bit clunky, but you got used to them. I loved that game very much, and revisit it every few years, but not a lot of people I know have ever played it or even heard about it. Dark Messiah of Might and Magic. It was one of Arcane Studios' earlier games. so fans of Prey and the Dishonored series might like it. The Xbox port was pretty weak in regards to the RPG elements since they made it all very streamlined for some reason. However, the original PC version gives you much more freedom to customize the protagonist. It runs off the source engine, so you know the physics will get whack as hell. Plus you have a kick ability to make it even more wackier, turning it into the adventures of Sir Kicksallet as you launch orcs, goblins, and the 5 voice-line necromancer guards into spike walls and off cliffs. Star Sage Tribes came out in either 1998 or 1999, but was one of the first games that used projectiles and mid-air combat. The base game itself was pretty awesome, but what made it incredible was the extensive modding community. Full-fledged RPGs with unique textures, maps and NPCs. The game is pretty much dead now, but still has a few active people and servers. Might be more nostalgia, but what an incredible game and player base. The Advanced Wars games, almost fully overshadowed by the Fire Emblem series. Both were made by Intelligent Systems. Billy Hatcher and the Giant Egg. Such a unique experience, gameplay that I haven't seen since. Also the theme song is hype. There is a game I just recently heard of and immediately got on Switch. It's still quite new and definitely has more than a few bugs. But its concept is so cool and the game itself is beautiful. It's called Pine and the concept is that you are a human in a world where humans never made it to the top of the food chain. There are 6 main species on the island including the humans, and basically everyone is stronger, smarter, and more well established than you and your people. One of the coolest things about the game is that it has an always changing sort of political status among the different species. If you ally with the Fexels, then the Litters will hate you because they hate the Fexels. You can join in fights or you can try to watch from a distance as a Carablan gatherer gets into a fight with a Gobbledew gatherer. There's a main quest to follow, some puzzles, resource gathering, crafting, and combat. It has elements that remind me of Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild, but it does still have plenty of bugs and kinks to work out. The game developers seem to be active as well. Split Second, a very good racing game with the added element of trying to destroy the other drivers with explosions. Peas. You wrecked yourself. Sacrifice. I don't remember a lot of buzz about it. It is one of the most imaginative RTS titles in history. It came out late 2000, and I don't think there has been a game like it. Unlike most RTS titles, it played like a third-person RPG instead of a top-down isometric game. You personally controlled a unit. You would summon creatures and cast spells. Get into direct combat with the opponent. The goal was to corrupt the altar of the enemy. You play a wizard in service of one of a pantheon of gods. The campaign is well told and imaginative. You show up after a catastrophe destroyed your reality, one that you might have caused in some ethereal realm, and the gods there try to seduce you to the side. Every mission, you can choose to serve the same god or a different one, gaining new spells and summons each time. You essentially build your repertoire this way, similar to an RPG, since you keep your old selections. As war breaks out between the gods and they start dividing into factions, your options close off, until you are left serving the last god standing against a horrific foe. It has some great voice acting. Tim Curry plays this god of air who constantly insults the earth god. The game's visuals are insane. The world crafted using voxels that could show massive terrain destruction. One of the spells would transform a huge area of the map into a volcano and rain down massive flaming boulders that would break massive holes in the ground. Sadly, it sold pretty poorly. It was ambitious, funny, ahead of its time. The UI really hurt the game. It's pretty awkward to play. Kenshi. It's kind of a messed up dystopian game that takes place in some barren hellhole. Not your typical AAA titles. More PC and independent. Lower budget. But as a gaming experience, I think it captures the very essence of what an organic gaming experience to be. The game itself is kind of this messed up scenario and places you in the middle of it. Rise or fall, it almost feels like it's up to fate. But the cool thing is that your player gets stronger with repetition, so as long as you're alive, you've got a shot, even if you're a bleeding, limbless, and crawling great distances starving, a scenario all too common in Kenshi. Custom Robo on the GameCube. Brave Fencer Musashi for the PS1. West of Loathing,